Hello everyone, how's it going? So in recent terrible news in the gaming industry, which has been happening almost every month, sometimes even every week, Monolith Studios shut down after WB decided to cut them down, along with canceling the Wonder Woman game they were working on. So Monolith Studios was a very acclaimed studio. They were around for a very long time. They made Condemned, they made Fear, they made Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor, so they're an extremely beloved studio who also crafted one of the most revolutionary game systems of all time, the Nemesis system. Unfortunately, WB Games patented the system, so for any other studio to use it, they would have to pay royalties to WB Games, which is pretty obtuse for a single system. Regardless, the Nemesis system was revolutionary. It allowed NPCs to adapt and change their tactics based on the player action. Now, this doesn't sound like a big deal, but it was all done in real time. So if you were to it was implemented in Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor, and basically what would happen if the player killed an Orc in a very unique way, such as with arrows, there's a chance that Orc would come back and be immune to arrows, or poison damage, or immune to flanking, and so on and so forth, creating individual stories within the game, allowing for extreme replayability. It doesn't matter how you get to the end of the game, everyone's journey would be different. And I remember in Shadow of Mordor in particular, if you fought the same Uruk many times, by the end of the game, the penultimate boss fight would be that Uruk, the one that you've been fighting and killing en masse. Sushi's here. But yeah, it was a revolutionary system, and they just made it even better with Shadow of War, which WB ruined that game with its microtransactions, implemented loot boxes into that single player game. But yeah, apparently that there was more story around how they developed this system, and this comes from Laura Fryer. Now, she is a veteran within the game industry. She debunked the infamous chainsaw hoax, which I did a video on, and you can see it there on the right hand side. But most importantly, she gave us insight into how the Nemesis system came about, and it was because of used game sales, believe it or not. So here is Laura's. I won't play the entirety of the video because I want you to watch it. It's a very good video, but this section I want people to watch.
Was that people would play through the game and then return the game disc to a retailer and get paid, which was very common at the time. This was great for gamers because they could buy the game and then sell it back to a company like GameStop and buy something else. It was great for GameStop because then they sold that used game for a discount and they pocketed the money. For game developers, though, it was a disaster because they weren't getting paid for every game. They were only getting paid for the first copy sold. They lost millions of dollars. With Shadow, we face the same problem. How do we create a single-player game that is so compelling that people keep the disc in their library forever? We knew Monolith's game engine wasn't yet capable of having a fully open world like a GTA, and this team wasn't interested in going the multiplayer route, but we still had to solve for the constraint. And this thinking is what led to the Nemesis system, arguably one of the most creative and coolest game features in recent memory. If you're not familiar with it, here's Michael, the creative director, talking about it.
The Nemesis system means when you're playing is that the bosses you face, the villains you face, are going to be uniquely yours. Their personalities are very amplified, they remember what you've done, they react to it, they grow. So it's really a way to have a living world where you have very unique and personal villains and boss fights.
So I'm just going to play that section. Again, I highly recommend you go watch her videos. She goes into detail about some very interesting stuff, how she decided to leave the company in order to become basically the cannon fodder employee to raise morale. I won't say much more about it. Let's just say it's a very good video. But regardless, this is actually a very interesting system because I remember, I can't find the interview, I think it's behind when Borderlands 2 is going to be released. Randy Pitchford went on, I believe it was GameSpot or like IGN or something, I can't remember, and I can't find this interview anywhere, but I remember him saying, or maybe I'm remembering this wrong, that single-player games are one of the worst things that can affect a game developer because, like she said, people would play these games one time, sell them off, and then the publisher and developer would lose a ton of money. And since we live in the age of YouTube, basically someone can post the ending for a game weeks before it comes out, and it just ruins the entire experience. And for a lot of players, for me personally, it doesn't affect me. I still like playing through the game, but because single player games don't have the same longevity as multiplayer games, because a large portion of their appeal comes from the narrative elements, like for example BioShock or Final Fantasy, the second you see the critical moments of that narrative, the value for that game drops tremendously. And with this situation, the fact they created this system just to combat used games is absolutely insane. And it also showcases how creative, when pushed against the wall, developers can become. Like, stuff like this really harkens back to even PlayStation days, where the Crash Bandicoot, the first game, they made it work because they hacked the PlayStation in order to get access to extra RAM, or how Silent Hill's iconic fog system was created because the system couldn't render the entire town, so they limited the field of view by using the fog system that's now iconic within Silent Hill. And this is another system where developers had a problem, in this case used game sales. Look, I love used games because I feel like in our digital age, physical media is starting to come back, especially now that, for example, recently, HBO Max, they took down the entire catalog of Looney Tunes shows from the digital library. So if you stream it, you basically lost access to that. So physical media is starting to rise back up. Not to mention certain physical media discs don't even have the full game on it, like Halo Infinite and Starfield. Assassin's Creed Shadows, I also believe, and Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. I don't know about the last two, but I'm definitely sure about the first two. But it's just a very interesting concept that the very thing that makes gaming so popular, where people trade and give and donate used games to a lot of their friends, or to people who need them, or just for profit, nowadays was the reason that pioneered one of the most iconic systems in gaming. It's unfortunate that the Nemesis system is locked behind WB Games, and they haven't really been doing much in their game development. I still haven't forgiven them for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. I don't know what the hell they were thinking with that. But they did have wins with Hogwarts Legacy, and hopefully they'll understand what makes a studio great is great games, not trying to siphon as much money from the player as possible. Again, Shadow of War launched with a terrible loot box system. I played it on day one when that system came out. It was awful. Then I replayed the game recently, like last year, and the updated features where they removed all the grindy elements made it a lot more appealing. Regardless, I really think Talion's an underrated character, but there you go, the more you know. The Nemesis system was made because used game sales were a problem, and they decided we're going to make a fun system that'll make games infinitely replayable and allow players to just keep the game in their library. So tell me what you think in the comments below. I'd love to hear other people's opinions. Go sub to Laura. She does incredible work in giving us insights about the gaming industry. And that's it for me. Bye.